Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2018 and this experiment which has been going on for far too long, where we're taking a look at what would happen if a non-league team were given, I think, £5 billion, £6 billion, who even knows anymore. It's more than some countries make in a year. Anyway, we're going to find out if they can finally win the Premier League, crack into Europe, or do anything meaningful with a huge amount of money that's been pumped into the team. I wasn't originally going to do an extra part to this video, but I said if the last video got a ridiculous number of likes, I think I said about 500, then I'd do an extra part. It actually ended up getting 851 likes at the time that I'm recording this video. It's probably past 1,000 by the time I put this video out. So absolutely humbled by that. Thank you so much for doing that. The only other video that hit 1,000 likes was actually the first part of this experiment, so thank you so much for the support. If you are new around here, do subscribe to the channel. It really helps it grow and attract more people. There are new experiment videos every 2 days on the channel unless something comes up or an experiment takes too long to run, and then there might be a slight delay, but there is always daily content, so subscribe if you haven't already. Now, we're not going to waste time in this episode. We're just going to jump forward 10 years in time, which I've already done. The year is now 2062. They've had money longer than some clubs have existed. So we're going to go straight to Boston and see if they've ever won the Premier League just by seeing their homepage. And as you can see, they haven't. There was a little bump. I've given them £2 extra billion and 10,000 reputation throughout since the last episode. That's where this little peak came from. They finished in 9th place. Then they had 6th, 4th, 3rd, 4th, 3rd, 6th, 9th, 6th, 10th, and 10th again. And they have not managed it. They've had Højbjerg as manager, though, ever since the last episode. So he must have been manager now for a good 10 plus years. The stadium capacity now up to 37,000. They've expanded that, so that is no longer a problem. You can see they're a professional club, worldwide reputation. If we have a look at their club details and in their finances, they've got £268 million in the bank, so they have spent a lot of money. Their wage budget ridiculously high. Their facilities are all pretty much perfect. There is no reason why they are not challenging at the top of the league, and yet they are finishing down in 9th place. It makes no sense, and it's got to be related to the ownership of the club. But even that has changed hands several times. They've had a few different chairmen. So I honestly don't understand what the problem is, other than you cannot buy the Premier League in this game. It's not a thing that you can do with AI control. You can do it on your own. I'm sure if we all had £5 to £7 billion given to us, we would be able to win the Premier League. There's no question about that. But the AI just do not value money whatsoever. So let's have a quick look at their players, because people keep shouting at me for not looking at their players. We'll just sort them by value. You can see they've got a £72 million here. Enrico Klaassen, he is a player that they signed for £47 million from Schalke, and has been a very good player for them ever since. He's a striker, gets quite a few goals. Ed Love, good name for a player, £60 million, worth a bit of money. Plays as a right midfielder, which is interesting. Signed for £39.5 million. So their team has a lot of value in it. I mean, they're pretty much all over 20 million, some of them worth even more than that. So no doubt these players should be doing a lot better than they are. If we have a look at the senior squad and their schedule, going back to the 52 season, which is where we left off, 52-53 season, we're just going to have a quick look and see if they won any cup competitions. You can see the Carabao Cup went quite well till they were knocked out by Southampton. Did well in the FA Cup, going through to the 6th round before losing to United in extra time. The following season, they were in Europe, in the Europa League, managed to qualify for the group stage, went out to Everton in the Carabao Cup, but did well in the group stage, beating the likes of Besiktas, Uypes, no idea how you say that, and AZ Alkmaar, getting through quite easily in that group. Terrible run of form there. Through in the FA Cup as well, and in the 4th round, and then through against Leverkusen 4-1 on aggregate, and drawing with United, but going out in the FA Cup. They went through against Dynamo Kiev 6-0 on aggregate. And then against Juventus, they won 3-0 on aggregate, home and away wins, taking them through to the next stage of the Europa League. That is very impressive. They're in the semi-finals. I think they were in there before and got beaten by Crystal Palace. Did they do it this time? 2-0 against Porto, 2-1 in the second leg. They're into the final of the Europa League. Have they finally won a European competition? Let's go to the bottom. They have. They beat Benfica in the final of the Europa League to get their first piece of major silverware. James Brown, the legend that has delivered them the Europa League final and a place in the Champions League for the first ever time. Incredible stuff. The following season in the Champions League, they won the European Super Cup 2-1 against Liverpool. It took extra time, but Eduardo Munoz, the hero in that game, giving them another major piece of European silverware. And in the Champions League, drawn against Bayern Munich, Olympiacos and Dynamo Kiev, did well against the latter two. Actually drew with Bayern at home as well. And it looks like they went through reasonably comfortably, finally losing to Bayern in the return fixture, but definitely through. Beat Millwall in the FA Cup. We're out of the Carabao Cup quite early. Drew with City and then were beaten. And drew Real Madrid in the Champions League knockout stages. Not doing themselves any favours there. Losing 3-2 in the home leg. It was a 58th minute goal that sunk them. They did get one back, but 3-2 defeat. And then the return leg, 1-1 away from home. Had they had a better result at home, they may well have gone through. That's quite disappointing and unlucky for them. But they were knocked out of that. They're already at the FA Cup. Nothing really to take a look at there. The following year, they were in the Champions League group stage, because I think they must have finished third the previous season. Benfica, Milan and Schalke in the group this time, and they won 2 of their first 3 games. Beat Schalke, beat Benfica, and then lost to Milan, so finished second. They're through against Man City in the Carabao Cup into another semi-final. Through against Coventry, beat Bournemouth 2-0 in the first Carabao Cup, drew with them, so they're into another final, the Carabao Cup final. Through against Stoke as well in the FA Cup. Beat Valencia 4-0 in the Champions League knockout stage first match, and then beat Manchester United 1-0 in the Carabao Cup as well to put themselves up there with 2 or 3 now Carabao Cup titles. They are winning trophies. That's all we care about. Through against Leicester in the FA Cup, and then beat Valencia 1-0 in the other leg there as well. So doing well on all fronts in the competitions. Beat Portsmouth in the quarterfinals, so there's an FA Cup semi-final there. Beat Atletico Madrid 2-1 in the Champions League quarterfinal at home, and then lost 3-1 away from home, but they've reached a new pinnacle there in the Champions League, making the quarterfinals. In the semi-finals, beaten by Crystal Palace, who knocked them out of the Europa League a few years ago as well at the semi-final stage. So no FA Cup success there. The following season, again in the Champions League, Celtic, Dynamo Kiev and Bayern, the teams in there. Rough start to the group, but they recovered, drawing with Bayern, beating Celtic and Dynamo and going through. Through in the Carabao Cup quarterfinal as well, so something else for them there. They then beat Rotherham in the FA Cup, Everton over 2 legs in the Carabao Cup, and Bournemouth in the FA Cup as well. So still going in all of the competitions. Beat Porto 2-0 in the first leg, through in the FA Cup, and beat Tottenham 3-2 in the Carabao Cup final. I wasn't even paying attention to that. That's a second consecutive Carabao Cup. So maybe they're not winning the Premier League, but they are collecting silverware. Through against Porto as well in the Champions League second match, into the quarterfinals there, but knocked out by Chelsea in the FA Cup, so still no success there. They beat Atletico Madrid 2-1 at home. I think they did that last season in the quarterfinals as well. Did they make it through? They lost 1-0 and went out on away goals. Oh, another bitter blow going out to Atletico Madrid, but they are improving there. Disappointing they weren't able to make it into the semi-finals. The following season, though, still in the Champions League. Another good draw, Besiktas, Real Madrid, Dynamo Kiev. Familiar teams coming out every time, but they managed to make it through, I think. Got through the FA Cup against Barnsley and Middlesbrough, and then beat Bayern 2-1 in the Champions League knockout stages at home. And in the return fixture, they drew 1-1, so they knocked Bayern out of the Champions League in the knockout stages. They're into the quarterfinals, out of the FA Cup at the quarterfinal stage. Drew Man City, 1-1 draw at home in the Champions League, and then lost 2-0. They cannot get past the Champions League quarterfinals, and they have been knocked out. The following season, in the Europa League this time, because they didn't qualify for the Champions League, doing well in the Europa League, getting through the group stage quite easily, and beating Peterborough in the FA Cup. Getting knocked out by Arsenal, beat Randers FC in the first knockout round, Leverkusen in the second knockout round, beat Lyon in the quarter-finals, so they're through to the semi-finals, beat Middlesbrough of all teams in the semi-finals and then lost the final to Inter Milan 1-0. Bernard Brosman with a 13th minute goal, stopping Boston from winning a second Europa League title. No Europe at all the following season. They missed out on the Champions League as a result of that. Doing well in the FA Cup though, through to the semi-finals. Beat Liverpool 3-2 and then lost to United 2-1 in the final. Disappointment in another cup final at the end of the season for Boston. The following year, they are in the Europa League once more, doing well, getting through the group stage and into the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup, where they were beaten 3-0 by Liverpool at home, which won't have done them any favours, and they were knocked out at the semi-final stage. But through against Dynamo Kiev in the first knockout round of the Europa League, through against Spartak in the second knockout round, beat Roma 3-1 in the quarter-final first leg, and 3-1 away. So into the semi-finals, they drew with Bilbao at home 2-2, and then lost 3-0 away, going out at the semi-final stage once more. And then this last season gone, no European football, no Carabao Cup win. The FA Cup through to the sixth round, but out at the semi-finals to Middlesbrough. So there you go. That is their history up to now. If you look at the competition screen, you can see 2 third-placed finishes in the Premier League, the best they ever achieved. Did win the Europa League, though, in 54 and runner-up in 59. Won the European Super Cup in 54 as well. Definitely their best year, I would say. Given that the following sort of 12 months on, they finished third in the Premier League for the first time as well. Runners-up in the FA Cup twice. I must have missed... oh no, they lost to Man United, didn't they, in 60, but I can't remember the 47 one. But they've won the Carabao Cup 4 times, so that is something at least. If we have a look at their transfer history over this period of time, you can see 100 million, but 96 received, 142 million, 14 million, sorry, so financial fair play kicking in once more. 90 million the year before, 116 million transfer embargo. Maybe that explains their recent decline. 140 million, 233 million, 10 million, 114, 209, and then we're back to where we left off last time. So another £1 billion easily spent on transfers. If we look at their managerial history, then you can see that Højbjerg hasn't actually been in charge for 10 years. He's come back to the club. He resigned from the role in 55-58. Was that the first time he'd been manager? He was manager back here as well, in 47 as well, when he was sacked. So he's been manager 3 different times. Not for that long either, cumulatively, but he's still there. Looks like they recycle managers quite often. I mean, Lloyd Isgrove has had a bunch of chances as well. 3-4 times. Oh, he was caretaker. That's why he's been around so much. A long time caretaker manager as well. So at least Højbjerg wasn't in charge for about 10 years of mediocrity. If we look at their best 11, this is what it's made up of. Goals scored. Cezary Kubicki, definitely their best scoring player. No records of him. He hasn't been kept too long, I don't think. But he is their highest goal scorer. Patrick Moores has got 83 as well. 99 for Linus Moy. He is still playing currently for 1860 Munich, where he's been for a few years. Spent quite a while at Boston, getting nearly to that 100-goal mark. Their record appearance player looks like it is their goalkeeper by 1 goal, Andrew Harling. Still at the club, 36 years old. Been there for quite a long time, but not a youth recruit. Other long-term players, can't look at Kubicki, but if we have a look, Linus Moy didn't start there, and those are the major players really. We've got Dogo here. He is someone they signed from PSG, so not another youth recruit there. But there are the stats. Some people did want to see their best 11. But I think really that is it. I am not doing another part to this experiment. It is just not happening because they are useless, Boston. Absolutely useless at trying to build a new team. I will just show you the facilities there. That's their stadium right now. Built in 2060, just a couple of years ago, brand new stadium for them, but nothing too surprising. So if you've enjoyed this experiment, the first experiment of FM18, do drop a like on the video down below. There will be a new experiment for you in 2 days' time, all being well. I've not decided what that is yet, but do subscribe if you want to catch that when it comes out. You can also follow me on Twitter and pitch me FM Experiment videos by clicking the link in the description. You can also support the channel on Patreon, like some others have been doing recently for incredible sums of money, but I'm not expecting that from anybody. It's just if you have a couple of pounds left over at the end of the month. But until next time, see ya.